Did you know that you do not have to cut out carbohydrates to fix your blood sugar? That single sentence is going to sound wrong to almost everyone, because for years the advice has been the same tired story: cut the carbs, eat less, suffer more, and hope for the best. But the fastest way to actually fix your blood sugar has almost nothing to do with taking food away. It has to do with adding the right foods back in, and the results are strange enough that you may not believe them until you try this yourself. There are hundreds and hundreds of people who have turned their numbers around in a matter of days simply by adding certain foods to what they already eat. And this is not a short-lived trick either. Many of these same people are still keeping their sugars low without medication, months and even years later. So stay with this, because by the end, you are going to have 10 specific foods and a plan for tonight that can start moving your numbers before the week is even over. But there is a twist waiting near the end of this list, something that trips up almost everyone who tries this, and if you skip past it, you could end up making a mistake that puts you at risk, so do not leave early. Before the first food, here is something almost nobody explains in a rushed 12-minute appointment. High blood sugar does not start with sugar. It starts upstream with a hormone called insulin. Insulin is the key that unlocks the door of your cells so that glucose, the sugar floating around in your blood, can leave the bloodstream and get inside the cell where it is actually supposed to be used for energy. But after years of riding the blood sugar roller coaster, something changes. Your cells stop answering the door. Insulin knocks and knocks, and the cell just stays shut. That is what insulin resistance really is. Your pancreas, sensing that nothing is getting through, panics and starts pumping out more and more insulin to force the door open. And yet your blood sugar keeps climbing anyway. The usual response to this is a prescription that pushes even more insulin into a system that is already flooded with it. Nobody sits down and explains that food itself can speak directly to those same insulin receptors, waking them back up instead of drowning them further. That is exactly what the next 10 minutes are going to walk you through. Every single food on this list does one of 3 jobs inside your body. It either slows the sugar coming in, or it cools the inflammation that is keeping your cells deaf to insulin in the first place, or it wakes the insulin receptor back up so your own body can finally do the job it was designed to do. You do not need to start all 10 tomorrow morning. Trying that will probably overwhelm you and you will quit within a week. Add them in slowly, stack them over the next couple of weeks, and let your body adjust. But the very first one on this list is one that almost everyone walks straight past in the grocery store without a second glance, and that mistake alone might be costing you more than anything else on this list. The first food is fenugreek seeds. These are small, hard, amber-colored seeds sitting quietly in the spice aisle of almost any grocery store for a couple of dollars a bag. If you assumed they were some exotic ingredient only used in faraway cuisines, you have been walking past one of the most powerful blood sugar tools on that shelf, and it costs less than your morning coffee. Here is what is happening inside your body when you eat them. The seed is packed with a soluble fiber called galactomannan. The moment this fiber touches water in your stomach, it swells into a thick gel that physically slows how quickly your stomach empties carbohydrates into your small intestine. Slower emptying means the sugar trickles into your bloodstream instead of flooding it. No flood means no giant spike, and no giant spike means no panicked dump of insulin from your pancreas. On top of that, fenugreek carries an amino acid that nudges your pancreas to release insulin more efficiently, while helping your muscle cells pull glucose out of the blood on their own. People who try this consistently report fasting numbers coming down within a week or 2 on this addition alone. To use it, take 1 teaspoon of whole seeds and soak them overnight in a glass of water. In the morning, drink the water and eat the softened seeds before breakfast. If the bitter taste bothers you, grind the seeds and stir half a teaspoon into yogurt or sprinkle it over eggs instead. Start low because this fiber is strong and your gut needs a few days to adjust. But fenugreek is only the beginning, because the next food is sitting in almost every kitchen cupboard right now, and most people reach for the wrong version without realizing there is a difference. The second food is cinnamon, and you almost certainly already own a jar of it, but the kind you have matters a great deal, and most people are grabbing the wrong one without knowing it. The common grocery store cinnamon is called cassia, and it contains a compound called coumarin, which can be hard on the liver in large amounts taken daily. The version you actually want is Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes labeled true cinnamon. It is milder, safer to take daily, and worth switching to. What makes cinnamon work on blood sugar is a group of polyphenols, natural plant compounds that behave almost like tiny stand-ins for insulin itself. They help your insulin receptors grip glucose more tightly and slow your stomach from emptying too quickly after a meal. Research out of a human nutrition program at a major agricultural research institute found that under half a teaspoon a day meaningfully lowered fasting glucose in adults with type 2 diabetes. If you skip past this thinking it is too simple to matter, you are leaving an easy win sitting untouched in your spice rack. Use about a quarter to a half teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon a day, stirred into oatmeal, coffee, or a smoothie, timed with a carbohydrate meal, because that is exactly when you want your receptors gripping harder and your stomach slowing its pace. Now, the third food on this list might be the single most underused item in this entire video, and the mistake people make with it wipes out almost all of the benefit before they even get started. Number 3 is broccoli sprouts, not the same thing as a head of mature broccoli in the produce aisle. We are talking specifically about the tiny 3-day-old sprouts, and if you ignore that distinction, you will miss almost the entire point. Broccoli sprouts are loaded with a compound called sulforaphane, and these tiny sprouts contain somewhere between 50 and 100 times more of it than a fully grown head of broccoli. Sulforaphane does something that none of the other foods on this list do quite as directly. It travels to your liver and quiets down what amounts to an overnight glucose factory. Your liver actually manufactures sugar while you sleep, and in insulin resistance, it produces far too much of it, which is exactly why so many people wake up with a high fasting number that makes no sense to them, since they have not eaten anything for hours. A study out of a university in Sweden gave concentrated sulforaphane to people with type 2 diabetes and found it measurably lowered their fasting blood sugar, with the strongest effect showing up in exactly the people whose sugar was hardest to control. You can grow broccoli sprouts yourself in a jar for pennies or buy them ready-made in the produce section. A small handful, about a quarter cup, added to a salad or sandwich most days is plenty. Do not cook them hard, since high heat destroys the active compound. Eat them raw or barely wilted. So far, every single food has done the same quiet work, either slowing the sugar down or waking the receptor back up, and we are only 3 foods into the list. The next several are going to change the very meals you are already eating, and one of them is a food most people have been avoiding for the exact wrong reason. Number 4 is the avocado. Most people avoid it because of the calories and fat content, and that fear alone is quietly costing them. The fat inside an avocado is monounsaturated fat, the same family found in olive oil, and it happens to be one of the most blood sugar-friendly things you can put on a plate. The reason is simple. That healthy fat, combined with the fiber inside an avocado, slows your entire meal down. When you add half an avocado to a plate of rice or toast, you are not removing the carbohydrate at all. You are putting a brake on how quickly it turns into blood sugar. The glucose climbs gently instead of spiking all at once. Monounsaturated fat has also been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, meaning your cells answer that insulin knock a little bit faster than before. This tends to be the easiest food on the entire list to turn into a habit because it makes the meal more filling and you stop reaching for a snack an hour later out of habit. Half an avocado a day is a sensible amount. Put it on your eggs in the morning, mash it onto whole grain toast, or add it to a salad that already contains a starch. Anywhere there is a carbohydrate, an avocado softens the blow. But the next food works in a way that feels almost like a magic trick the first time you see it happen in a glass. 5th is chia seeds. These are tiny gray and black seeds, and they punch far above their size. If you have ever watched chia sit in liquid and slowly turn into a pudding, you have already seen exactly how it behaves inside your own gut. Chia is one of the richest sources of soluble fiber you can buy anywhere. When it meets the water in your stomach, it forms that same thick gel we already talked about with fenugreek. That gel wraps around the carbohydrates in your meal and slows their absorption down to a crawl. The sugar releases slowly and steadily, which means you avoid both the spike and the crash that leaves you feeling shaky and hungry an hour later. Chia also carries a plant-based omega-3 fat that helps calm the low-grade inflammation sitting quietly underneath insulin resistance. Cool that inflammation down, and the cells slowly start listening to insulin again. 1 to 2 tablespoons a day is enough to do the job. Stir it into yogurt, drop it into a glass of water with a squeeze of lemon, or blend it into a smoothie. Give it about 10 minutes to gel before drinking it, and drink plenty of water alongside it, since all that fiber needs liquid to keep moving through your system. Now, the sixth food on this list does not slow anything down at all. Instead, it goes after the actual root of the problem, and once you understand what it is doing, you may never look at your dinner plate the same way again. Number 6 is fatty fish, specifically salmon and mackerel. This one does not slow your meal down the way the fiber-rich foods do. It works on the deeper issue, the reason your cells stop listening to insulin in the first place. Insulin resistance is driven in large part by chronic inflammation. When your body stays quietly inflamed year after year, that inflammation physically interferes with the insulin signal right at the surface of the cell. Salmon and mackerel are loaded with 2 omega-3 fats called EPA and DHA, and these are among the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory compounds known. They lower the inflammatory signals circulating through your body, the cell membrane becomes healthier, and the insulin receptor starts working the way it was originally designed to. People who eat fatty fish twice a week consistently show calmer, more stable numbers, often alongside better blood pressure as well. Aim for 2 servings a week, roughly the size of your palm each time. Wild salmon, mackerel, sardines, and herring are all excellent choices. Bake it, grill it, or simply buy it canned if that fits your budget better. Canned mackerel and sardines are actually some of the cheapest, most powerful foods on this entire list, which almost nobody realizes. But the 7th food might be the one that surprises you the most because it protects something you probably never even think about when you think of blood sugar at all. 7th on the list is walnuts. Out of every nut available, this is the one worth reaching for first because of what it does for your blood vessels at the same time it works on your insulin. Walnuts are rich in polyunsaturated fat, along with the same plant-based omega-3 found in chia seeds. That fat improves the function of your endothelium, the thin lining inside your blood vessels, which happens to be one of the very first things high blood sugar damages over time. At the same time, the fat, fiber, and protein inside walnuts blunt the rise in blood sugar after a meal and have been shown to lower fasting insulin, the number that quietly tells you how hard your pancreas is straining behind the scenes. Eat a small handful as a snack instead of crackers or a cookie, and you have taken what would have been a sugar spike and flattened it into a calm, level line. A small handful is roughly a quarter cup, or about 7 to 10 whole walnuts. Keep them raw or dry roasted, never the candied or honey-coated kind, and use them to replace a processed snack rather than adding them on top of one. Now, the 8th food on this list corrects a piece of advice that misled an entire generation, and once you hear why, you may feel a little frustrated about how long that bad advice stuck around. Number 8 is eggs, whole eggs, yolk included. For years, people were told the yolk was the enemy, and that advice pushed countless people toward sugary breakfast cereals that were far worse for their blood sugar than the eggs ever were. A whole egg is almost pure protein and fat, with virtually no carbohydrate at all, which means on its own, it barely moves your blood sugar in the slightest. But the real magic is something doctors call the second meal effect. When you start your day with eggs instead of toast or cereal, you steady your blood sugar not just during breakfast, but all the way through to lunch. You walk into your next meal with calmer numbers and a smaller spike than you would have had otherwise. The protein and fat also keep you full, so the mid-morning cravings that usually send you toward the cookie jar quietly disappear on their own. Swapping a cereal breakfast for 2 or 3 eggs tends to be one of the single fastest changes people notice on a morning glucose reading. 2 or 3 whole eggs in the morning is a solid target for most people. Scramble them, boil a batch ahead for the week, or fold in some spinach. Add that avocado from earlier right on top, and you have built a nearly perfect blood sugar breakfast without much effort at all. But the ninth food on this list has an effect so fast that if you own a glucose meter at home, you could watch it work in real time tonight. Number 9 is apple cider vinegar, the one with the fastest visible effect of anything on this list. The active ingredient is acetic acid, and it does two things at once. It slows your stomach from emptying, so the carbohydrates in your meal arrive into your bloodstream gradually instead of all at once, and it helps your muscles pull glucose directly out of your blood to use as fuel. Research led out of a university nutrition department found that a single tablespoon of vinegar taken before a carbohydrate meal lowered the after-meal blood sugar spike by roughly 20 to 30% in people with insulin resistance. That is a drug-sized effect coming from something that costs only a few dollars a bottle. Take 1 tablespoon, and this part matters, always diluted in a full glass of water, about 10 to 15 minutes before a meal that contains carbohydrates. Never drink it straight because the acid is hard on tooth enamel and on your throat. And if you already take any medication for blood sugar, talk to your doctor first, because vinegar combined with that medication can push your sugar down faster than you might expect, sometimes further than you actually want it to go. Now here comes the 10th and final food, and it proves the entire point of everything discussed so far, because this one is technically a carbohydrate, and yet it is one of the most reliable tools for lowering blood sugar on this whole list. The 10th food is lentils, built from a slow carbohydrate called resistant starch, wrapped inside soluble fiber, alongside a healthy dose of plant protein. That combination means the glucose inside a lentil gets released into your blood slowly and steadily over hours, instead of all at once the way it would from white rice or a white potato. Lentils carry that same second meal effect mentioned earlier with eggs, so a bowl of lentil soup at lunch keeps your sugar steadier all the way into the evening. Swapping white rice or white potato for lentils a few times a week is one of the most reliable ways to bring down an A1C, which is your rolling 3-month average blood sugar. Aim for a half a cup to a full cup of cooked lentils a few times a week. Use them in a soup, a stew, or a cold salad tossed with olive oil and a splash of the vinegar covered earlier. They are filling, they are inexpensive, and they stretch a single meal further than almost anything else on this list. Now here's a story that shows exactly what happens when all 10 of these come together at once, and the numbers involved are going to surprise you. There was a woman, 63 years old, recently retired, who came in frightened because her fasting sugar was sitting around 180, and her doctor had just told her it was time to add a second medication. She did not want to spend the rest of her life climbing a ladder of medications, and she was genuinely scared of where this path was heading, because she had already watched her own mother lose toes and eventually her eyesight to this same disease. Nobody told her to cut her carbohydrates down to nothing. Instead, eggs and avocado replaced her cereal in the morning. A tablespoon of vinegar went in before her larger meals, lentils were swapped in for white rice, walnuts replaced the afternoon cookie, fatty fish appeared on the menu twice a week, cinnamon found its way into her coffee, and broccoli sprouts landed on her sandwich at lunch. Within the very first week, her fasting numbers started dropping. Within 3 months, working alongside her own doctor, she came off that second medication entirely, and her A1C moved from the diabetic range back toward normal. 2 years later, those numbers have held steady. She did not starve herself through any of it. She simply ate more food, just the right food, and let her own body finish the work. Here is why all 10 of these work together in a way that cutting carbohydrates alone almost never achieves. Every single one of them hands your insulin its job back without starving you in the process. The fiber-rich foods slow the glucose down, so your pancreas never has to panic in the first place. The fish, the walnuts, and the chia cool the inflammation that was jamming the signal at the cellular level. The cinnamon and the vinegar walk right up to the insulin receptor itself and help it grip glucose again the way it used to. Do that meal after meal, day after day, and the cell that stopped answering the door slowly starts opening it again on the very first knock. That is what reversing insulin resistance actually looks like at a cellular level. And once that shift happens, your body starts holding your sugar down on its own, which is exactly why those numbers stayed low for 2 full years and counting. But before any plan gets handed over, there is one clear line that has to be drawn, because skipping it could genuinely put you at risk instead of helping you. If you are currently on insulin or on an older class of blood sugar medication called a sulfonylurea, these foods can lower your sugar fast enough that your existing medication dose may suddenly become too high for your new normal, and that combination can drop your sugar into dangerously low territory without warning. So add these foods in with your doctor watching your numbers closely, and let them walk your medication dose down gradually as your body improves on its own. Never stop a prescription on your own initiative. Bring this exact list to your next appointment instead and work through it together. So here is exactly what to do tonight in 5 simple steps that take almost no extra time. Tomorrow morning, replace your cereal or toast with 2 or 3 whole eggs and half an avocado. That single swap alone changes your blood sugar for the entire day ahead of you. Tonight, soak a teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in a glass of water and drink it first thing tomorrow morning. Buy Ceylon cinnamon, not the cassia sitting on most store shelves, and start with a 1/4 teaspoon a day stirred into your coffee or oatmeal. Before your biggest carbohydrate meal tomorrow, take 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar diluted in a full glass of water about 15 minutes ahead of time. And this week, swap white rice or white potato for lentils at least twice, and put fatty fish on the menu for 2 nights. Stack these in slowly over the next 2 weeks rather than all at once. You are not removing the foods you love from your life. You are simply adding in the foods that protect you while you keep enjoying the rest. Now, here is the part almost nobody talks about, and it might explain something that has been confusing you for a long time. Everything covered so far brings your sugar down during the day and after your meals. But there is a strange pattern a huge number of people report, which is that their highest reading of the entire day shows up first thing in the morning before they have eaten a single bite. You fasted all night and somehow your sugar went up anyway. There is a specific reason your liver does exactly that while you sleep, and a way to shut it down almost entirely. That explanation, the one that finally makes sense of the number you wake up to every morning, is waiting for you next. So do not stop here.